Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. FBI reportedly investigating Lincoln Project co-founder. Isn't that interesting? So, guess who won in the clash between President Trump and the Bush-era Republicans? By the way, they had zero impact or influence in the outcome in Biden winning. They had, like, the Lincoln Project served as this false, horribly warped morality tale where they served as the moral basis and foundation for a great many liberal Democrats to level this disdaining contempt against President Trump simply because other Republicans stood up against him. So the Bush era, Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld era neoconservative ideologues, and some of them have, like, other organizations similar to the Lincoln Project, and maybe they have skeletons in their closet that the FBI will eventually investigate. But you see, John Weaver is now is reportedly the subject of an investigation into allegations of horrendous, the most atrocious criminal conduct. And interestingly enough, John Kasich hired Weaver, who is now being accused of the most despicable activity, to be his chief strategist. So this is Cleveland.com, a Q&A with John Weaver, chief strategist behind the John Kasich presidential campaign. Posted May 9th, 2016. Isn't that funny? Isn't that absolutely hilarious? And I mean, it's not funny, it's not hilarious in the sense that anything's amusing from the horrendous allegations against the Lincoln Project. But it's interesting and amusing that the loudest, most despicable, nefarious political operatives claim to be morally superior to President Trump. Trump presided over the peace between the beginning of détente between North and South Korea, hopefully leading to a roadmap towards peace. President Trump presided over the Abraham Accords, peace between Israel, UAE, Bahrain, Morocco. These are tremendous accomplishments where those countries want Biden's administration to continue Trump's foreign policy. Nobody wants. There's not an American that wants the Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld foreign policy to be continued. It's repackaged as smart power. So President Obama destroyed Libya with a failed NATO intervention that nobody talks about. If you say something on social media, oh my God, your life is over. But if you actually turn a country into a failed state, like Biden and Clinton and President Obama did with Libya, under the guise of a humanitarian effort, well, then, you know, that's just the way politics works. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. We're on our way to 200,000 plus subscribers. Tell your friends about this channel. If you want to support my voice long term, my Patreon is below, and I want to thank you to my new Patrons, especially in this political climate. Thank you so very, very much. You can read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Roanoke Times, on hagoodman.com. You can see my debates. I was 2 years ahead of everybody on a whole bunch of things. So watch those debates. I'm referring to the absurd message board. I told people that it was very dangerous and was the worst thing to ever happen to a political movement. And I told people when it became popular that the only negativity can result. Only the most, like, terrible things could result from that type of message board nonsense. And look what happened. So I told people to get off of Twitter. I deleted my Twitter account 2 years ago. And I told people that one of the main reasons I voted for President Trump, from being the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post, and the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post, Because there's a direct line between Bernie 2016 and voting for President Trump. A direct line, especially in terms of foreign policy. Is I opposed, and you can see my writing in The Hill, the Huffington Post Salon, the Roanoke Times, the Jerusalem Post. I oppose counterinsurgency conflicts. They're the most they're the worst type of military conflict. Because you're sending American soldiers, or you're sending Americans into cities, into civilian areas, where, just like Vietnam and we see now in Iraq and Afghanistan, oftentimes you don't know who the adversary is. You can be the most powerful military in the world, and if you send Americans off, and the Soviets learn this, and the French learn this, these are lessons in history that we need to learn. You cannot, there's no military objective or definition of winning. And President Trump ended a longest running military conflict. But so you vote for President Trump because you oppose the Lincoln Project. You oppose the Lincoln Project if you were a Bernie Sanders supporter. You oppose the Lincoln Project if you were a Trump supporter. I kept saying, I'm going to vote for the person who is the opposite of those despicable individuals who pretended to be the moral foundation of opposition against Trump. This is a tremendous political victory for President Trump, and thank God he's not on Twitter. President Trump on Twitter allowed Democrats and media to overshadow, to just erase his accomplishments, his numerous accomplishments. He allocated more funding to historically black colleges and universities than any president ever. That's a fact. That's below in the pinned the comment section, the pinned comment. Description. That's what I was thinking of. Anyway, winning isn't everything. John Weaver in the business of political seduction. Politico, 2015. Now let's just do a word search for Kasich. Weaver, meanwhile, was still romancing another White House hopeful. Interesting choice of Ohio Governor John Kasich. In April, Weaver told The Atlantic that Kasich, who is still contemplating a White House bid, would absolutely be a realistic option for the nomination. He followed up on this bit of public flattery and privately reaching out to the governor, whom Weaver had never met, to offer his services. He beat their door down, he explained later to CNBC. Okay, so fortunately for Weaver and Davis, it actually did. In June, after deciding to pursue the White House run, the Ohio governor tapped Davis to work for a super PAC. Weaver was a closer call. The strategist had touted his deep knowledge of New Hampshire, developing McCain's victorious 2000 primaries. They worked for John McCain as well. That's something that would be particularly valuable to Kasich. Weaver said John Kasich is a proven winner. And anyway, he eventually became the chief strategist. So the man the FBI is investigating, I am definitely not trying to say that Kasich knew anything or was a part of anything, because that's something that the Bill Kristol and Steve Schmitz of the world would do. There's a controversy and scandal, and you were in close proximity of that person. Well, guess who was in close proximity of John Weaver? Steve Schmidt. And perhaps other never-Trump Republicans in different organizations. So you have Bill Kristol going after Jim Jordan. Well, what did Bill Kristol know? Did he know John Weaver? Did he know Steve Schmidt? So, what's his name? Conway. How much did these people know? And this is the moral foundation for the never-Trumpers. And they were utilized by the Democratic Party. They didn't care, but they made like $90 million. They raised $90 million. It's lucrative. See, people say, you went from Bernie to Trump because of money. It's like, what? That's not, there's the money. It's lucrative to devote your life to just, hating on Trump. That's where the money is. That's where you get $90 million if you're the Lincoln Project. But here, a Q&A with John Weaver, chief strategist behind the John Kasich presidential campaign. And It's interesting. Concerns. Okay. He talked about the controversial deal he cut with... Okay. Weaver talked about his concerns about presumptive GOP nominee Donald Trump and what he sees in Kasich's future. Weaver also, the number of Republicans, supposedly thoughtful Republicans, who have made every kind of rationalization possible in order to morally defend their support of Donald Trump. This is John Weaver of the Lincoln Project, accused of the most horrendous, disgusting, nasty, evil things that I can't talk about on YouTube. The moral rationalization. I'll put that link below in the pinned comment. This is a Cleveland.com article. The people who are the most immoral have devoted their lives. They juicy schmoyed themselves. And what they did was they said, okay, here's this groupthink. Trump has 92% negative media coverage. Anything good that he does, he's kind of, it's overshadowed by his tweets. So people love to despise President Trump's personality, which is, like I said, I keep saying, it's something that, like, President Trump should not have insulted LeBron James. He should not have insulted NFL athletes. There's a certain point as president that you have to foster dialogue, discourse, debate. It doesn't matter if media doesn't want to hear it, Democrats don't want to hear it, intelligence operatives are after you. That's the game. That's the playing field that you decided to enter. But look at the duplicity, the disingenuous nature of these political operatives, the utter pure hypocrisy. He was morally defend their support of Trump. And he goes, he's just, would you work for Trump if the campaign asked? Under no circumstances. I'm an American first, and I don't want to elaborate on that. Isn't that interesting? Do you think John Kasich would accept a VP offer from Trump? Under no circumstances. He's been as Sherman-esque about that as one can be. Do you understand? Oh my God. Oh my God. Under no circumstances. Instead, I would be accused, and there's now evidence of the most horrendous activity where the FBI is now investigating. And 21 individuals. There's probably more who have accused this man, who under no circumstances would work for Trump. Under no circumstances. Fast forward 4 years. 5 years. And now, the most disgraced political organization on the face of the planet is the Lincoln Project. And Bernie Sanders supporters and supporters of President Trump and everyone from the far left to, people who voted for President Trump because of foreign policy, because they wanted to reverse U.S. foreign policy, they can all look and say, I told you so. How many things have I told I said, get off of Twitter. I was right. I said the Lincoln Project slithered to the Republican Party and to the Democrats, and nothing good could come of that. And they almost certainly have a whole bunch of skeletons, and I'm going to always oppose those people because they are the Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld Republicans. George W. Bush was the worst president of all time. I told you the message boards were dangerous and a complete hoax. I told you the Lincoln Project you should stay away from them. And oppose them. I told you to delete your Twitter account. I was right on all. This is the thing is, I'm not Nostradamus, but I have some wisdom. I can't, I did say that Clinton would lose to Trump, which was a tremendous call. I haven't been right about everything, but I'm generally spot on in terms of my analysis. I told you that Trump-Russia was nonsense, that the first impeachment was nonsense. I told you that they wouldn't convict President Trump. And I explained that President Trump is a great president in terms of achievement. Now, if he just simply tones it down and is a little bit more diplomatic, he'll be unstoppable. Because You see now, even Facebook is now removing political advertising, or pushing less political ads, like their new policy now. Why? Because Biden's president, and they don't want to, like, Biden is propped up. Democrats are propped up by everything from social media to the Washington Post and the New York Times to MSNBC and CNN to Hollywood. You won't work in Hollywood. Well, we see what's happening now. Instead of being upset with Gina Carano, who, if she said something like, out of context, or offensive or misguided, it's nothing compared to the revisionist history of AOC that I write about in the Jerusalem Post. That Yad Vashem in Jerusalem condemned and refuted her absurd statement. She tried to equate two things that have nothing in common. Nothing. And then the left, and then people who defend AOC, well, people are gathered in one place, so therefore it's the same thing. What's wrong with you? But that's like what AOC said, and I can't even get into it, but go to Goodman.com, read the Jerusalem Post op-ed. It's like, that's the worst thing you could do, to recreate memory and historical record into your own absurd madness, simply because you lack, like when Democrats said that Trump is the reincarnation of the 1930s and 1940s Germans, they lack an argument, a compelling argument, so they have to engage in just like this bogus hyperbole. If you lack an argument, then you rely on Twitter to amplify your nonsense. Ideas that wouldn't resonate on their own live and survive and are amplified on Twitter. That's what Twitter is there for. To prop up and elevate ideas that generally wouldn't become mainstream, or statements that are just simply absurd. So when they equated Trump to the 1930s and 1940s Germans, and then even though he was like the best, like one of the best presidents for Israel and the Jewish people on the planet, he did better among Jewish voters than he did in 2016, and African American voters, and Latino voters, and Asian American voters. He did better among non-white voters than any Republican in 60 years, according to Newsweek. And that's with 92% negative media coverage. But when they say he's a despot and tyrant, they don't have an argument. What they mean is they just don't like his personality. That's it. They don't like his personality, so therefore he's a despot and a tyrant and the most evil human beings on the planet. And then they say, well, look at his immigration policy. Well, look at President Obama's. Just as horrendous. And I could go into it, but again, YouTube policies. Go to look at the Senate report. The problem is that when you think that you're morally superior to Trump, you're probably ignorant of the atrocities and the horrendous activity that took place under Democrats when they were in office. Go look at the Senate report talking about atrocities that took place under President Obama's administration pertaining to that topic. But anyway, you have John Kasich now, who hired Weaver, who is now being investigated by the FBI for the most despicable activity, alleged despicable activity. 21 people coming out and saying, look, he did this and here's the evidence. And Lincoln Project now is completely the most disgraced, immoral political organization. They're all abandoning ship. And these are the people who had the loudest megaphone. One of the loudest megaphones. Now, if you wait until the skeletons come out in Hollywood, okay? All the directors and producers and actors with the skeleton, oh my God almighty. It wouldn't even take a tremendous investigative journalist. It wouldn't even take that. Hollywood is a cauldron of the most immoral people. And they're the ones condemning and judging Trump. And by the way, they worked like Trump took over, like he was what, 220 million from NBC or something like that for The Apprentice. But think of the skeletons, and we already saw directors, but there was like one or a couple. You look at the actors and the directors and the producers who spent the past, I mean, a lot of like, the kind of actors that are no longer really doing any work, except they made a name for themselves, or like no longer really in the spotlight, but they made a name for themselves by going after President Trump. Could you imagine? If anyone were to investigate their past, their skeletons? I mean, these, like, if you take Hollywood, the Lincoln Project, intelligence operatives, they have more skeletons than a graveyard. On a microscopic level, I know how President Trump feels, although like everybody who goes up against Trump, whether it's Avenatti or Michael Cohen or Jussi Smollett or Peter Strzok or Weaver and the Lincoln Project, Steve Schmidt, all of them, Rick Wilson, all of them. It's interesting. All of their skeletons come out, and it actually hurts them more than it does Trump. On a microscopic level, it's interesting that I haven't been in media for a little while now, but people have tried to go after me, and it never works out for them. It never works out for them because the people who condemn and judge the most, simply because they don't like an idea. So, like, people went after me when I was a Bernie Sanders supporter. And the people who did, it never worked out for them. Like, there was this no-name publication that just, people there obsessed over me. And they wrote these hit pieces that, like, the publication doesn't exist anymore. It's through, like, nothing I did. It's just that, like, these people, they're the types of individuals that all they have is contempt and indignation. They're not capable of hearing an argument that they disagree with. Because whether they're an atheist or a believer in God, it turns into their religion. So they look at somebody, they're the zealot, and look at somebody like somebody who engages in blasphemy, and they have to stop this, atrocity, this horrendous thing where they listen to something, they hear an idea. So when I was saying Bernie Sanders was better than Hillary Clinton, this one, no-name publication that folded, doesn't exist anymore, tried to go after me or, write hit pieces. Okay, they're no longer around. There's I have other stories too. It just didn't work out for the people who try to go after me. Through no fault of my own. Like, when you devote your life to trying to hurt others simply because you don't like what they say, the worst outcomes take place for you. So, my whole thing with the Lincoln Project is I'm just going to vote against them. Like, I wasn't going to, when I was on the left, I wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton because you had the neoconservative ideologues advising her and part of her campaign. And we see that they were part of the Democratic Party. But now it's interesting how Biden's administration and the Democratic Party is now almost cleaning house. No more political ads on Facebook, and the Lincoln Project imploding, and so all the tools that they use to go after Trump, they've now either disregarded or those tools have imploded and become political liabilities, because they were always political liabilities. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now to this channel. Ladies and gentlemen, you see what happens? Like, President Trump's not on Twitter. It's not just he gets acquitted. His primary adversaries in the Republican Party are now, like, the most reviled people, which they always were, but now everyone sees them for what they are. You have just so many, like, you have now John Kasich is linked to it. Not linked to the scandal or controversy, but, like, it's interesting how he hired, well, what did John Kasich know? What does Steve Schmidt know? it's interesting how all and you have John Kasich going after Trump. Give me your thoughts below. You wait, and the way Hollywood works is that you'll have like a producer and director, or you know people like right below the star or the superstar or whatever. Let's say there's a sitcom, or let's say there's like a series or whatever, so a movie, and then the internal dynamics, people backstabbing one another, lead to, oh my God, these revelations that, my God, these are the most horrendous people in the world. Like a couple of years back, we saw with that director. I don't want to even say his name, because then you go ahead, the YouTube algorithm. But anyway, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. I'll be back numerous times today, people. Thank you for the channel's growing again, and I just want to thank you.